The wedding crash. 2 days before my sister's million-dollar destination wedding, the groom's biological mother, who we all thought was dead, showed up demanding the ring back and claiming my sister's future husband is the rightful heir to a fortune he doesn't know exists. I, 31 male, am the older sibling, a designation that in my family translates to chief problem solver and designated realist. I'm the practical one, the guy who gets pulled into situations when emotions run high and someone needs to keep things from going off the rails. I make spreadsheets for fun. I solve crosswords in ink. I am, by nature, an antidote to drama. I don't like confrontations, and I'm usually the last person who believes life can suddenly turn into a soap opera. That's probably why I noticed something was fundamentally wrong before anyone else did. The signs weren't dramatic. They were just logically inconsistent. We were at a high-end destination resort for my sister's wedding. The kind of place where the ocean views are so perfect they look photoshopped, where every suite has a private balcony overlooking infinity pools, and where the staff not only remembers your name, but also your preferred coffee temperature. And, of course, the prices make you double-check your bank app even if you're not the one paying, just out of sheer existential stress. The wedding was a mere 2 days away, and the air was thick with that peculiar blend of excitement and pressure. Everything looked normal on the surface. My sister, the bride, was stressed in the way brides usually are, oscillating between anxiety about the timeline and despair over a minor issue with the imported calla lilies. My parents were in peak "we love our daughter" mode, smiling a lot, meticulously avoiding any conversation that might veer into the territory of cost overruns. And then there was my future brother-in-law, Mark. He was calm, almost unnervingly so, floating through the final preparations like a man who genuinely believed nothing in the universe could possibly go wrong. He was a genuinely good person, a little reserved, but with a deep, steady love for my sister. There was one defining detail everyone knew about Mark, a piece of his personal history that had been repeated so many times it felt like a fixed, unchangeable detail of reality. His mother had died when he was a kid. A car accident. The event was traumatic, resulting in a closed-casket funeral. His father, a taciturn man, had handled all the arrangements and sealed that chapter shut. That old, tragic story had always served as the quiet explanation for his distance, his discomfort with emotional family topics, and the way he would subtly shut down when people pushed too hard for sentiment. He carried the weight of that loss gracefully, but it was always there. So, when the resort front desk called my room, not the groom's, but mine, and the voice on the line, strained with professional discomfort, said there was a woman in the lobby asking for the groom, claiming to be his mother, my immediate, highly rational reaction was disbelief. I assumed it was either a simple case of confusion, maybe someone misidentified an aunt, or, far more likely given the resort's clientele, some kind of elaborate, low-level scam artist trying to leverage a high-profile event for a quick handout. But something about the front desk agent's tone, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor, made me go down anyway. My sister was already on edge, and I was determined to manage this small, trivial crisis before it reached her ears. In the cavernous, marble and glass lobby, I saw her immediately. She wasn't subtle. Mid-50s, perfectly coiffed silver blonde hair, dressed in a lightweight silk suit that screamed European tailoring, and wearing jewelry, a diamond cocktail ring, and a chunky gold cuff that was clearly meant to be noticed. She carried herself with the kind of rigid, self-important posture of someone who expected instant deference and obedience as a default. She was engaged in a very public, very high-volume argument with a junior staff member about something laughably trivial, the temperature of the lobby's complimentary citrus water, or the seating arrangement of an unattended table. I don't recall the specific offense, only the absolute conviction of her entitlement. When she glanced up and saw me watching from a distance, her petty argument instantly ceased. She zeroed in on me, her expression transforming into a sharp, predatory smile, as if she had finally found the piece she was looking for to start the game. "Your family," she stated, her voice carrying a certain low-frequency resonance that commanded attention, walking straight up to me with an unnerving confidence. I put up the first guardrail. "I believe you have the wrong person. I said, keeping my tone deliberately flat and professional, mirroring the staff's manner. She didn't miss a beat. Not for long. That was the moment. That casual, dismissive arrogance, the absolute certainty that she would soon be my problem, sent a cold rush up my spine. My stomach tightened, and my internal alarm system, usually reserved for stock market crashes or appliance malfunctions, went off with a quiet, persistent beep. This was not a scammer looking for $20. This was a force. She introduced herself as Eleanor, Mark's mother, and then dropped the bombshell. She wasn't dead. Her explanation was delivered without a hint of emotion, sounding more like a business strategy session than a confession of 2 decades of deception. She claimed she'd left the country years ago, escaped a volatile and abusive marriage with Mark's father, and had legally allowed herself to be declared deceased, a legal ghost, to ensure she could start over with a clean slate and, as she insisted, to ensure her son's safety from his father's temperament. I stayed away to protect him, she concluded, the statement hanging in the air, ripe with self-serving martyrdom. And why was she back now? The facade crumbled instantly. It wasn't maternal longing. It wasn't a sudden change of heart. He's about to marry into significant assets, she announced, her eyes sweeping over the resort's opulence with proprietary hunger. She didn't sound emotional. She sounded strategic. This was a calculation. I told the front desk to hold her and went straight to Mark's suite. My voice was low, and I remember the effort it took to keep it from trembling. Mark, I need you to come with me.
Now.
There's a situation in the lobby you need to see. His reaction was the only confirmation I needed. When he saw her, standing imperiously by the check-in desk, the shock was immediate and physical. His face drained of all color, turning a sickly ash gray. He didn't yell, didn't accuse her of lying, didn't demand explanations. He just stood there, staring, not at his mother, but through her, like his brain was trying to reconcile 2 impossible truths at once, the fixed reality of a dead mother and the impossible reality of the woman standing before him. She seized the moment. She walked up to him, her expression softening into a saccharine imitation of affection, and touched his cheek. She called him her baby, said she'd missed him. The gesture was an act of pure emotional manipulation. Unfortunately, my sister arrived right as the woman began her main performance. Eleanor announced, not asked, that the wedding needed to be paused. There are legal matters to address, she declared to the small crowd that had begun to gather. She then pointed a sharp, perfectly manicured finger at my sister's engagement ring, a beautiful, modest antique that was a family heirloom of our family. That ring represents money that doesn't belong to you. Not yet. That was when she dropped the central, terrifying claim, the inheritance. She spoke of an old family trust established by Mark's grandfather, involving old money, a complicated structure, and a host of obscure conditions attached to it. She claimed Mark was the sole, rightful heir to this massive fortune, and that as his now-present mother, she needed to approve any marriage that involved the sharing of those future assets, or even the perception of their influence. My sister, bless her heart, listened to the entire, breathtaking monologue. She absorbed the shock, the lie, and the threat. Then, she calmly said one word. No. She repeated her intent. The wedding was happening in 2 days. The ring was hers and wasn't up for discussion. Eleanor smiled, a chilling, thin-lipped smile. She had expected the defiance. What followed wasn't a confrontation. It was something worse, quiet, pervasive, and methodical interference. Within hours, the collateral damage began. Vendors, who had been completely calm and professional moments before, started calling Mark and my sister with manufactured concerns. The florist wanted urgent clarification on the number of centerpiece roses, a question that had been settled months ago. The caterer said there was a billing question that needed immediate senior approval. The resort management, clearly having been pressured, asked to review the list of individuals authorized to approve final charges. No one mentioned Eleanor's name directly, but the pattern was a neon sign in the night. She was planting seeds of doubt, chaos, and financial complexity everywhere she could. She was leveraging her air of authority and her mention of lawyers and trusts to intimidate the professional staff. She cemented her presence by booking a suite at the resort under her own, now resurrected name, and started behaving as if she were the real hostess of the event. She took conspicuous, lengthy phone calls in public spaces, talking loudly about lawyers, inheritance, secret trusts, and protecting her son from greedy in-laws. She even sent an official-looking, professionally formatted email outlining her conditions for letting the wedding proceed. 1. The return of the ring. 2. A signed prenuptial agreement that explicitly excluded any future claim on the Mark-related assets. 3. A 6-month delay of the ceremony. She copied my parents, my sister, Mark, and most significantly, an estate attorney whose high-profile firm I recognized immediately. Crucially, she worked on Mark privately. She performed the role of the suffering martyr perfectly. She told him she'd sacrificed everything for him. She repeated the lie that she'd stayed away for his safety. She planted the idea that my sister didn't understand what kind of responsibility she was marrying into. You could see the confusion, guilt, and deep-seated childhood trauma piling up on him. Mark, fundamentally decent, kept apologizing to everyone for things he didn't even comprehend. That night, after absorbing all this theatrical chaos, I did what I do best. I detached the emotion and focused on the facts. I called my corporate lawyer back in the city. I laid out the entire soap opera in dry, professional language. I asked one simple, dispassionate question that changed everything. Given a claim of escaping an abusive marriage by faking her death, is she currently legally alive? My lawyer paused for only a moment. I'll check the records, but if the death certificate was official and never legally amended, the answer is no. She's a ghost in the system. An hour later, the call came back. She wasn't legally alive. She had never undone the death declaration. No amended certificate. No reinstated legal identity in the U.S. The immediate realization was a thunderclap. Everything she was doing, the threats, the demands, the vendor interference, relied entirely on confidence and intimidation. She had no standing to file claims, interfere with trusts, or make legal demands. She was a legally non-existent entity. My strategy shifted instantly from defensive to offensive. We stopped reacting emotionally to her drama and started meticulously documenting everything: the emails, the conversations, the vendor interference logs, and, most importantly, the confirmation of her legal status as deceased. Then she escalated. While my sister was out of her suite with Mark, Eleanor made her move. She accessed my sister's hotel room by telling the housekeeping staff that she was the groom's mother and she needed the engagement ring for mandatory insurance paperwork. The staff, intimidated by her confidence and the constant mention of lawyers, complied and let her in. The ring was gone. When confronted in her suite, Eleanor didn't deny it. She was utterly brazen. She held the ring box up like a prize. "It belongs to my family," she said, her voice dropping into a dangerous whisper. Her next move was pure leverage. "If you involve the police, I will immediately accuse you of harassment and assault. If you continue with the wedding, I will leak stories to the press, secret fortunes, greedy in-laws, and a vulnerable son being exploited." She claimed to know bloggers and journalists who loved stories like this. She thought fear would make us comply. She was wrong. My lawyer moved fast. Motions were filed immediately in the relevant jurisdiction to dismiss any earlier filings she had made, explicitly citing her lack of legal standing as a deceased individual. Most critically, the trust administrators, the high-powered financial firm managing the grandfather's fortune, were formally notified that a legally deceased individual was attempting fraudulent interference with the trust's governance. The administrators, governed by strict regulations, reacted as expected. They froze everything tied to her claims. They temporarily suspended any distribution or influence regarding the trust until the legal status of the interfering party could be resolved. The next morning, the visible effects of her legal non-existence hit home. Eleanor's credit cards declined. All of them. The shift in her demeanor was instantaneous and profound. The calm, icy confidence vanished. She was incandescent with fury, reduced to a common bully whose chips were called. She yelled at the front desk staff. She accused the entire resort of a conspiracy. She demanded that Mark, her baby, fix it, to call his father, to unfreeze the accounts, to make the problem go away. When Mark, his own reality, shattered by her actions, finally found the courage to ask her why she had lied about being dead for 20 years, her mask completely slipped. It was easier than dealing with the consequences, she spat. A simple, selfish truth that negated every supposed sacrifice. Then, she tried to backtrack. She offered to return the ring in exchange for a private, one-on-one meeting with my sister, a final attempt at emotional extortion. Against my vehement advice, my sister agreed, but with 2 resort security guards positioned discreetly outside the door and me monitoring the hallway. Eleanor returned the ring and then produced her final card, a handwritten letter, supposedly from the grandfather, explicitly naming Mark as the rightful heir and emphasizing the need for bloodline control over the fortune. It looked incredibly convincing at first glance. The paper was yellowed, the script flowing, but it was too convincing. We didn't hesitate. I had my lawyer immediately take possession of the letter and send it for forensic analysis. The results came back in a matter of hours. It was a fake. Recent ink, applied with a modern pen. Artificially aged paper. Amateur mistakes in the letterhead dating. When confronted with the forensic report, Eleanor snapped. All pretense of maternal affection was gone. She told my sister that if she married Mark without her permission, she would personally make sure he never saw a single cent. "I will burn everything before letting outsiders touch it," she screamed. That was the moment Mark, traumatized but finally clear-eyed, spoke the final, devastating truth. He looked at his mother, this specter of his childhood trauma, and said, his voice flat with finality, "You don't have anything left to burn." Here is what she never anticipated, the ultimate checkmate. The trust did exist, but the grandfather, a shrewd man, had included a potent morality clause. Any heir attempting to access or influence the trust through fraud, coercion, blackmail, or any criminal activity would be permanently and irrevocably disqualified. Their substantial share would be redirected immediately to a set list of nonprofit charities. The trust administrators, armed with my evidence of her illegal interference, her forged document, and her legally deceased status, triggered the morality clause. Both Eleanor and Mark were cut off. Permanently. The fortune was gone, redirected to humanitarian aid and education funds. Eleanor caused a final, magnificent scene in the lobby, screaming about betrayal and conspiracy, and was swiftly escorted off the resort premises that night by security, her suite charges frozen and her belongings held until payment could be arranged. The chaos lifted immediately. Vendors relaxed. My sister's smile returned. The wedding went forward. On the morning of the ceremony, in a pathetic final gasp, she filed one more civil lawsuit, claiming emotional distress and interference with parental rights. It was weak, baseless, and filed under her legally questionable identity. The judge, having reviewed the context, immediately issued a temporary restraining order, TRO, barring her from contacting the couple or any of the guests. She violated it the same day. She showed up outside the venue perimeter, screaming and filming herself, a lone figure of fury against the backdrop of a beautiful, peaceful ceremony. Police were called. She was arrested for violating the TRO. The wedding happened without interruption, a beautiful, peaceful testament to resilience. Weeks later, her entire civil case was dismissed with prejudice. She was sanctioned by the court and referred for further investigation related to identity fraud, forgery, and the theft of the engagement ring. The trust funds were permanently redirected to charity, ensuring the toxicity of the situation was completely neutralized. My future brother-in-law cut contact completely. He is now undergoing therapy, setting new boundaries, and slowly rebuilding his sense of reality, one not defined by a tragic lie and toxic manipulation. He's doing better now, and our family is supporting him. What I learned is simple. Entitled, aggressive people rely entirely on two things: intimidation and confusion. They thrive in the gray area of emotional chaos. They collapse instantly when everything is pulled into the harsh light of day, documented and exposed. Patience beats manipulation every single time. If you read all of this, you clearly enjoy watching entitlement implode. Subscribe and stick around. I've got more stories.